Are smaller guards going to become extinct? There are plenty of notable ones in the current NBA, though so far this offseason, teams have started to show where they stand on this, and it could impact a player archetype that we've become accustomed to while watching basketball. I'm going to take a deeper dive and discuss why this is happening, how what teams look for skill set wise is changing, and how it could alter teams' decision making in the future. For most of the NBA's history, point guards have typically been around 6 feet to 6'2". This includes your traditional point guards like Isaiah Thomas or Chris Paul, and players who can break defenses in various ways, such as Stephen Curry or Damian Lillard, who fit here in terms of height. Though over the last decade, primary ball handlers and the players facilitating offense have gotten taller. This chart shows the average height in inches of the NBA's assist per game leaders among qualifying players, dating back to the 2014-15 season. As you can see, the first year's average height is 74.75 inches, which is just under 6'3", and your top distributors were the likes of Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo, and some players who are 6'4 or 6'5 like Russell Westbrook and James Harden were up there, while LeBron James, who the league lists at 6'9", is the outlier. Now look at this most recent season, and the average height has jumped up 2 inches in a decade to just under 6'5". Trae Young came in first in assists per game and is 6'1", but LeBron at 6'9 isn't an outlier on this list anymore. Now you have big men such as Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Domantas Sabonis who crack this list, and that doesn't even include bigger guards in the top 20 such as Cade Cunningham, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, or Luka Doncic, who didn't even qualify this season, who are all listed at 6'6 or taller. So as a result of the added size, this brings on more defensive challenges. I've mentioned the challenges that smaller guards face defensively in the current NBA in various recent videos. So for a different perspective, here's Kevin Durant's thoughts on how he feels guards 6'2 and under aren't seen at a premium as starters currently on the Mind the Game podcast he did with LeBron James and Steve Nash. Durant elaborated, "You can't get picked on defensively, that's the thing, because we're playing such a pick-on game that literally if you can't guard, they will bring you up every play. If you're 6 foot, 6'1", and you're not a bulldog like a Davion Mitchell, Drew Holiday on the defensive end, or you're not a flat-out offensive savant like Kyrie, where you can score on dudes 7 feet tall easily in an ISO, then I just can't see it." So this isn't only me saying it, but an NBA Hall of Famer acknowledging this as well. Though we've seen this offseason how teams are starting to alter their decision-making on the topic. For years, we've seen a lot of guards who are 6'4 and under establish themselves as very capable scorers, and that can lead to very prolific roles on a team. Though we've seen how the defensive end of the floor can also be impacted as a result. Just take a look at some of the teams that made deep runs in these recent playoffs. The New York Knicks were evidence of this, as Jalen Brunson is listed at 6'2", and to me, would fall under the offensive savant category, as he does a ton of heavy lifting for them on that end. That was evident this postseason, as the Knicks' offense was 14 points better per 100 possessions when he was on the floor these playoffs. Though defensively, Brunson was targeted due to his size and to force him to use energy. The Knicks were 16 points better per 100 possessions defensively when Brunson was on the bench, which outweighed the huge offensive boost. While I'm not saying he's a better player, notice that Miles McBride, who is also smaller but fits more of the Bulldog mold defensively, was a positive on both ends. Meanwhile, the Indiana Pacers, who won the Eastern Conference, have a mix of players who can do a bit of everything offensively, but their two guards who would be considered on the shorter side, in Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell, would be in the Bulldog category defensively, and teams throughout the playoffs had trouble trying to hunt for matchups against them. Then you have the NBA champions and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Their top 8 players in their playoff rotation were all listed at 6'3 or taller by the NBA, and are all capable of holding their own defensively, so there were no true signs of weakness for opponents to attack for what is seen as one of the better defenses we've seen in recent memory. Though of the guards impacted this offseason, there are a lot of combo guards who aren't quite big enough to be shooting guards, but also aren't strong enough playmakers to truly rely on to run your offense. Now let's look at some of the notable guards 6'4 or under who've been traded or released this offseason. Jordan Poole had a career year on a per-game basis for counting stats, such as points, assists, and steals, shot a career best from 3, and had his best overall shooting season since 2022 with the Warriors. Though despite just turning 26, the Wizards traded him to the Pelicans to prioritize not only their young players, but also not pay him just over 20.5% of the cap the next 2 seasons. The Pelicans sent CJ McCollum in return to the Wizards. McCollum has long been a dangerous scorer, averaging 20 or more points per game each of the last 10 seasons, and like Poole, he has shown he can play the combo guard role. At 6'3", CJ is also prone to be targeted on the defensive end, and some of the advanced metrics from this past season weren't pretty in that regard. This next season will be the last year of his current deal, so while the Wizards will ask him to contribute while also being a veteran influence for their younger players, his market will be interesting to monitor next summer. McCollum wasn't the only player on an expiring contract at his stature who was traded and has shown they can fill it up. Anthony Simons was dealt to the Celtics by the Trailblazers in exchange for Drew Holiday, though there's talk that the Celtics are still looking to reroute him to another team this summer. Norman Powell is coming off a career year as he got extensive playing time as a starter, and while he's a great shooter, the Clippers preferred to trade him to the Miami Heat as he entered the last year of his contract as opposed to offering an extension, and are rumored to be in the Bradley Beal sweepstakes if he's bought out. Colin Sexton was a very efficient scorer the past 3 seasons in Utah, and should be entering his prime at age 26, though instead of being someone you'd think the Jazz might get a decent return for in a trade, they traded his expiring contract to the Hornets and had to attach a second rounder for good measure. This doesn't even include players such as Jalen Green and Cole Anthony, who were traded in big deals, D'Angelo Russell, who got signed by the Mavericks to the taxpayer mid-level exception, or Jordan Clarkson, who was bought out and signed with the Knicks. Though there is one thing a lot of these players have in common: defensive struggles. According to the popular stat Estimated Plus Minus, or EPM, that assesses a player's contribution in points per 100 possessions, McCollum, Sexton, Simons, and Poole all ranked among the bottom 15% of NBA players defensively this past season. That doesn't include some others mentioned who were in the bottom 25%. For some, the team defense could play a role here, and defending in the NBA is incredibly difficult, but players in this realm have to fall under or be close to the offensive savant category to offset some of the defensive concerns. This now raises a huge question. What are teams going to be willing to pay these types of players? It's a fascinating one, as teams with the new salary cap aprons have even less margin for error, and we could get some answers soon. Cam Thomas would fall in this category of player, but as I mentioned in my most recent video, is in limbo with restricted free agency. Zach LaVine has dealt with injuries over the past few years, though before last February's trade deadline was having the most efficient season of his career with the Bulls. Though despite that, LaVine isn't known for his defense and was met with a relatively cold market given that his deal this past season and this upcoming year would take up over 30% of the salary cap, and he was eventually dealt to the Kings as Bulls fans questioned the return. This will also be a major question the Miami Heat face with Tyler Hero. He's only 25 and made his first All-Star game this past season, and Hero has shown big-time scoring to go with some facilitating. Though Tyler's eligible for a 3-year extension worth $150 million in October, and that goes up to 4 years, $207 million if he waits until 2026. Given the new cap restrictions and lack of wiggle room, is a deal that would eat up 30% of cap space something you want to pay to a player that opponents are openly admitting to targeting defensively in a playoff series? That's a question the Heat as a franchise will have to answer in the coming months. As a whole, I do feel teams would still be open to smaller guards and the skill sets of the players involved in transactions this offseason. Though in this current market, I think the price tag is the issue. With players and skill sets evolving, and teams placing more emphasis on versatility, it's tough to justify paying some of these deals from the prior CBA that take up a decent part of the salary cap to someone with one primary skill that's also considered a defensive liability. It might take time until these deals expire before we get a true glimpse into how some of these players are valued on the open market, but it's worth considering when looking at some of the transactions that have been taking place. Though one thing's for certain, in the modern NBA, size matters, and versatility certainly helps too. If you made it this far, thank you. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with my latest in-depth NBA analysis.